Winter tightens over the Ardennes. The pines bowed under fresh snow, the roads reduced to narrow, icy threads. Breath hangs in the air like a veil. Patrols move softly, boots creaking in frost. And the front, after months of relentless advance, finally feels muted. Allied planners call this stretch a quiet sector, the kind of place where battered divisions can catch their breath. The terrain seems to agree. Steep ridges, dark forests, knife-edged valleys, and not nearly enough roads. What roads there are matter more than anything, because they are the only way to move guns, fuel, food, and hope. To the north, wind-swept high ground near Monschau, and the Elsenborn Ridge guards a cold doorway into Belgium. Southward, the map knots around Saint-Vith, a road junction whose spokes touch everything. Malmedy, La Glaise, and Stavelot sit astride ribbons of tarmac that lead west. Hofferlies and Clairvaux watch the Aar River and the wooded folds beyond it. Bastogne, with 6 roads like ribs around a heart, anchors the center. Farther south, Echternach leans toward the Sur, and beyond them all, the Meuse at Dinant, Huy, and Givet. Broad, deep water that separates the forest from the open plains to Antwerp. After the breakout from Normandy and the brutal fighting across France and the Low Countries, the Allied drive has slowed to a crawl. Supplies that once sprinted from beaches now limp along overstretched routes. Antwerp's port is in Allied hands, but the shipping lanes feeding it are still contested and choked. Fuel is rationed. Armor rests. Infantry units rotate through the Ardennes to recover. Experience and inexperience mix across the line. Some outfits are seasoned but thin. Others are new, learning the feel of winter foxholes one freezing hour at a time. The assumption settles in like snow. This is a place to hold, not a place to break. Across the forest, behind carefully drawn curtains of radio silence, a different assumption takes root. The German High Command frames a wager with winter itself. The operation is named Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine, defensive in name, offensive in soul. The aim is staggering in its reach. Smash a hole in the Allied front, race across the Meuse, seize Antwerp, and split the British and Americans, hoping to shock decision-makers into a negotiated pause. It is a plan that demands speed, surprise, and the sky's betrayal of the Allies. Low cloud and snow would pin Allied aircraft to the ground. Without that, the offensive dies in daylight. 3 armies are drawn up like springs along the frontier. In the north, the 6th Panzer Army assembles elite formations for the hardest road, through the Elsenborn Heights, past Malmedy, toward the Meuse near Liège. In the center, the 5th Panzer Army receives the crucial thrust, breakthrough near the Schnee Eifel and Saint-Vith, surge over the Aar, seize Bastogne's crossroads, and pour west. In the south, the 7th Army shields the flank, pushing through Luxembourg toward Echternach and the Sur. less to break the line than to hold it open for the armoured columns to the north. The ground dictates everything. The Ardennes is not a countryside, it's a funnel. Armour can only move along a handful of passable routes, rollbanen, and each is a bead string of bridges, villages, and choke points where one wrecked vehicle can stall an entire corps. German planners assign traffic officers, pontoon units, and engineers to clear ice, repair culverts, and manage the flood of steel. March tables are written to the hour. Columns are staggered. Every kilometre has a timetable. Every delay is a debt that must be paid back at the Meuse. Fuel is the second blade hanging above the plan. Germany's reserves are razor thin. The calculations are merciless. There isn't enough petrol to drive all the way to Antwerp. The offensive must live off the land. It must capture Allied fuel dumps along the way or bleed out by the roadside. Orders reinforce that truth again and again. Move fast, bypass resistance, seize fuel, keep going. Tanks without fuel are bunkers. The plan cannot afford bunkers. Surprise is the final instrument. Deception units spread rumors of defense, not attack. Orders move by courier rather than radio. Camouflage nets vanish into the forest gloom. Assault guns and tanks creep into assembly areas at night. Engines cut. Crews whispering into scarves. Special operations teams prepare to slip behind Allied lines at H hour, changing road signs, sowing confusion at crossroads, and steering traffic the wrong way. A handful will wear stolen uniforms at great personal risk, their purpose less destruction than disorientation, a wedge of doubt hammered into dispatch riders and checkpoint sentries. On the Allied side, winter and routine blend into a false calm. Along the northern shoulder, the 99th and 2nd Infantry Divisions hold the approaches to Elsenborn. The Schnee-Eifel Bulge is thinly held by regiments of the 106th spread along ridgelines that look secure on a small map and alarmingly isolated on a large one. The 28th Division covers a broad swath around Clairvaux and Wiltz, refitting after brutal fighting in the Hürtgen. Farther down, the 4th Infantry Division stands near Echternach along the Sur. Armoured reserves exist, but many are far to the rear or on other tasks. The strongest mobile formations rest outside the forest, warming engines only when called. Quiet sectors breed thin lines. In the villages, house lights glow behind blackout curtains. In the woods, foxholes are roofed with logs and snow. Sentries listen to branches crack under frost and wonder if they imagined it. It is the kind of stillness that lulls and deceives, the kind that makes a forest seem like a wall instead of a door. Intelligence reports note movements, rail traffic deeper inside Germany, snippets overheard, prisoner talk that hints at something larger. But December always brings the shuffle of units. And then there is the weather. If there were to be an attack, surely aircraft would see the build-up. Surely the sky would speak. In the German assembly areas, staff officers run fingers down map grids lit by shaded lamps, checking last-minute alignments. Assault battalions ease forward in the early dark, sled runners whispering under ammunition loads. Jagged shapes of Panthers and Mark IVs crouch in tree lines. Tank commanders memorize road names and turn sequences like prayers. Through this hamlet, left at the chapel, over the stone bridge, past the sawmill, west toward the sign that reads Bastogne. Every crew has a version of this. Every crew knows that the first hours decide the next weeks. Artillery lines wait with fuses set to airburst, guns masked by the folds of the hills. Forward observers have plotted American outposts, command posts, crossroads, and bridges. The opening will not be a drum roll. It will be a curtain torn down in one motion. Thousands of shells at once to stun, then infantry slipping past strong points, then the armored fists punching for the roads that matter. The assault troops have practiced stealth over strength. Avoid the big bunkers, seep through the line at the seams, seize the bridges while nerves are still suspended between sleep and waking. The clock approaches the appointed hour. The forest holds its breath. On the Allied side, coffee warms cold hands. On the German side, mittens grip frozen metal. Between them, the border is only a river and a rumor of safety. The gamble is total. The plan demands weather to blind the sky, traffic to flow without a snarl, and fuel to appear at captured pumps the moment gauges fall to red. It is a last throw cast into deep snow. In the darkness before dawn, the Ardennes feels ancient and indifferent. Trees and stone, river and road, the quiet of winter mistaken for peace. Then the first flash breaks the horizon, and the forest answers with thunder. The horizon cracks open with light and sound. A wall of artillery tears across the forest, not as a drum roll, but as a single stroke. Airburst over outposts, roads, and crossroads. Snow leaps from branches like powder. Wires snap, dugouts shudder. And for a long breath, the line is pure concussion and disbelief. When the echo fades, shapes move in the trees. Assault teams step through the gaps, slipping around strong points, testing for seams. The German plan is working. Hit hard everywhere, exploit somewhere, never stop. Along the northern shoulder, the first test slams into the high ground near Monschau and the Elsenborn Ridge. There, thin American lines, worn, cold, and wide apart, find a spine. Small units anchor themselves in the timber, trading space for time. In the lanes between the trees, tanks nose forward and stall under fire from hidden guns. The twin villages of Rocherath and Krinkelt become a maze of stone, smoke, and frozen hedges. Street corners are held like bridges. Each crossroads becomes a vow. The ridge refuses to fold. Every hour held here steals daylight from the timetable of the offensive. South of the ridge, the Losheim Gap should be a highway. Instead, it chokes. A small American platoon on a snowy rise near Lanzerath holds the hinge of a route far longer than any schedule allows. Telephone poles topple, trucks bunch up, and orders pile against the jam like ice in a river. An army can plan for surprise. It cannot plan for a single bottleneck that will not move. The delay ripples backward into the woods. Engines idling, crews staring at watches that seem to slow with the cold. In the center, the storm falls on the Schnee Eifel and Saint. Here the ground is deceptive, graceful contours that hide sudden folds and narrow draws. 2 American regiments, strung thin along a salient that curves eastward, are hammered from front and flank. German infantry seep through the seams, cut roads, and isolate hilltops that looked secure on a sunny map. Radios spit static. Runners go missing. The picture frays. Yet St. Vith itself, a crown of roads with spokes pointing everywhere, refuses to be a prize taken on the first day. Reserve armor begins to roll from the west, their silhouettes pale against snow, commanders scanning for signs, trying to read an attack that stretches from the Our River to the Sur. To the north of St. Vith, a spear point of armor and mechanized infantry finds a gap and drives hard. Columns flow through Honsfeld and Bullingen, scooping up fuel from roadside dumps, filters drinking what the plan never carried. This is the design. Bypass pockets of resistance. Ignore anything that does not hold a bridge or a road junction. Trust that speed will do what fire cannot. Westward, the route bends toward Malmedy and Stavelo, names that will become warnings whispered at checkpoints. At a crossroads near Malmedy, a war crime darkens the snow and hardens every defense west of it. From then on, restraint is replaced by a colder resolve. Roadblocks tighten, orders sharpen, and eyes narrow at every uniform that looks even slightly wrong. Behind the foremost tanks, another layer of deception spreads. Special teams in captured vehicles and borrowed uniforms move ahead to flip signposts, sow rumors, and raise doubts at barriers. Passwords suddenly matter. Trivia becomes a weapon. A question about a baseball team or a state capital decides who passes and who is searched by flashlight in the frozen dark. Rumor outruns map sheets, and time melts away in lines of cars held at friendly roadblocks, while guards ask again and again, "Who are you really?" Farther south, Luxembourg's hills tremble under the push of infantry armies tasked with shielding the main effort. Here, the goals are humbler and crucial. Pin the defenders, take bridges over the Sur, unroll the flank like a carpet so the armored columns in the center and north can pass. In Echternach, in Beaufort, in the folds along the river, companies trade fire across water turned black by winter. The fight is not spectacular, it is relentless. Each bridgehead won is a thread in a larger fabric that must hold the moment the center breaks free. In the middle sector, the town of Clairvaux becomes a stubborn stone in the stream. Elements of a weary division brace inside hotels, houses, and the castle on the height. They know they are outflanked. They also know the road to Bastogne runs behind them. Every delay they buy is a gift wrapped in hours. Time for traffic control points to form, for engineers to prepare demolitions, for division headquarters to understand that the attack is not a raid, but a campaign. Messages now carry a new word: Bastogne. 6 roads. Hold them. Weather plays its part like a conspirator. Low cloud and fog mute the sky, grounding the Allied edge that had ruled since summer. Without the eyes above, the ground war becomes a contest of maps, nerves, and recognition. Convoys move by taillight. Hand signals decide which way a battalion turns when signs are twisted or gone. On the German side, columns are tightly scheduled, but reality bites. One disabled tank on a narrow Ardennes road becomes a cork. An icy slope turns into a skating rink of steel. A detour through a village with a single stone bridge adds hours. Staff officers count delays with pencil strokes that dig into paper. Night comes early in December. Under it, both sides grope forward and brace. In the north, the Elsenborn line stiffens into a bulwark. Guns mass behind it. Observers stitch the snowy fields with coordinates, and the twin villages glow and darken, as assaults break against them. In the center, Saint Vith hears the approach of armor from both directions. German thrusts seeking to encircle. American relief columns racing to hold the spokes of the wheel. On the roads west of the Our, a hard-driving armored group noses toward the Amblève crossings, hungry for bridges, hungrier for fuel. At Stavelot, a single span becomes a prize worth a regiment. By dawn of the second day, the battlefield has a new shape. The northern shoulder holds like granite. The center bows, but does not break. The southern screen advances with method rather than drama. The breakthrough is real, but it is not clean. It is jagged, contested, and already behind the clock. And somewhere far to the west, staff maps are being redrawn with arrows that point toward one place over and over: Bastogne. Because if the crossroads fall quickly, the road to the Meuse opens. If they hold, every mile west becomes a fight through narrow lungs that cannot draw breath fast enough. Paratroopers are dropped in the night to seize a high, cold moor in the north. But the wind scatters them. Their radios whisper to empty hills. The idea was bold. The execution dissolves in darkness. On the ground, battalion commanders write orders that begin with 2 verbs: delay and hold, because they know what the sky cannot yet see. This offensive is a race against time, measured in bridges, in gallons, and in light. The forest keeps its secrets, but the roads tell the truth. Whoever owns the next crossroads owns the next day. The offensive, once hidden in silence, is now a roar heard from Liège to Luxembourg City. Yet within that roar, the battle narrows again and again to a single place, a farmhouse roadblock where a sergeant refuses to move, a village square where a tank dies nose first against a wall, a frozen hilltop where a forward observer calls fire until his line goes dead. The grand design depends on countless moments like these, each small, each human, each a stitch that either holds or tears. And as the second day fades, the forest knows this will not be over quickly. It will be decided by resolve at the edges and decisions at the center, by whether a handful of roads remain open or close under the weight of winter. Dawn bleeds slowly through a sky the color of steel. The guns ease, then start again, but the rhythm has changed. No longer a single crashing chord, more a rolling drum of urgent tasks. The northern shoulder, Elsenborn's frozen spine, still holds, pouring measured fire down the slopes. Every shell that lands there is a stitch in a larger fabric. To the south and center, that fabric is being pulled hard. A column that had moved like a knife now looks for a road that will let it keep cutting. Fuel drums clatter from captured dumps into German trucks. Gauges creep upward, then sink again. The stone bridge at Stavelot, so small on the map, becomes a door forced open at first light. Engines growl across wet cobbles, tracks grinding, infantry trotting in the steam of exhaust. Westward, the route climbs toward Trois Ponts, where 3 rivers pinch the roads into loops of stone. Engineers on the far bank wait until the lead vehicles are close enough to taste the fumes, then drop the charges. The bridge goes away in a single breath. The river swallows the span whole, leaving nothing but mist and shards of ice. The column yawns, pivots, searches for another crossing, like a hand groping for a light switch in the dark. La Glise, Stumont, names that will soon read like mile markers on the edge of a trap. The roads narrow to threads through farmyards and copses, each bend a blind turn, each village a tunnel of walls too close for comfort. American units, new arrivals, mixed with veterans and engineers in white-smeared coats, appear at corners and vanish again, slowing, stinging, stepping back before they are crushed, then setting up again at the next bend. The spearhead loses minutes, then hours. The sky stays low and sullen, keeping aircraft away, but the roads themselves have become a kind of enemy that no cloud can hide. East of them, Stavelot flickers like a lantern in the wind. Counterattacks nibble at the edges. A single hill, a single street, trades hands, and then trades back. Supply routes grow nervous. A burned-out truck at a pinch point turns into a cork that no staff plan can pull quickly. Fuel bows to arithmetic. the columns begin to drink their own timetable. Farther south and closer to the heart of the map, Saint. Vith turns into a stubborn knot. Here, fragments are gathered and made whole. Armored battalions slot alongside weary infantry. Artillery is pulled in shoulder to shoulder, and a defensive oval takes shape. What officers will later call a goose egg, awkward to draw and impossible to crack quickly. Orders are simple and cold. Hold the spokes, keep the wheel from turning. The enemy edges around the flanks with infantry and guns, probing for a seam that opens under pressure. It does not open. Each hour bought near Saint. Vith is an hour not available for the roads west. Each hour is a toll paid in smoke and frost. Between those two magnets, Stavelot to the north, Saint. Vith in the center, Bastogne begins to eclipse every other name. 6 roads meet there like nerves under a thumb. Headquarters maps get rewritten with thicker pencils. Trucks the color of old snow grind along night highways from depots in the rear, bringing a hard, fast reserve. Paratroopers hauled in by canvas and diesel, their gear piled in the aisles, faces turned to the black windows that reflect only their own breath. Alongside them roll elements of a lean, armored division, broken into teams with names spoken like promises. A team for Longvilly, a team for Warden, a team for Noville. They are sent out before they can settle, moving to crossroads that feel too quiet. The first fights around Bastogne are savage in their restraint. A tank destroyer parks nose in behind a hedgerow of ice. An officer traces fields of fire with a mitten and a whisper. A squad listens for gears on a road that curves in from the trees. When the leading German units arrive, the exchange is like a door slamming, fast, echoing, decisive. Villages become nouns of resistance. Neuf, holding, then bending. Noville biting, then bleeding backward by order. Marvy trading houses for time, house by house. The teams sent forward pay dearly, but they turn minutes into hours, and those hours become trenches dug, roots mined, guns emplaced, mines steadied. Inside Bastogne, a ring forms, not yet closed, but closing. Staff officers walk the perimeter on maps, planting flags that say, delay here, ambush there, demolish when necessary. Aid stations are laid out in cellars. Ammunition stacks against whitewashed walls. Fuel is counted with a bookkeeper's care. Roadblocks are given to personalities, names, habits, little vices like a blind corner or a culvert that floods when the snow melts midday and refreezes by dusk. The town itself becomes an organ with a rhythm. Dispatch riders out, wounded in, orders around and around in a circle that tightens as reports converge. The word that keeps returning is simple and flinty. Hold. Back at Saint-Vith, the oval breathes in and out. German pressure builds along the north and south edges, trying to pinch shut the gap that keeps the defenders supplied. Weather still favors the attackers, The sky is a lid. And yet each counterpunch from the oval lands harder than expected. Batteries mass fires by the map grid, then displace before the reply. Reserve companies appear where they are not supposed to be, guided by officers who have learned the back ways and the woodcuts in a single night. The clock shows the third day. The enemy's plan wanted a clean cut. Instead, it is carving a jagged wound. To the north, the Elsenborn heights never stop speaking. The ridge has become a gun platform, and the frozen fields in front of it a ledger. Assaults step off and are met by prearranged fire so exact it feels like a wire tripped. The villages of Krinkelt Rosherath glow at the edges and go dark, then glow again. When the line bends, it bends only to spring back, an iron rule written in the snow. The northern shoulder will not roll. It will anchor. South of Bastogne, Luxembourg's folds continue their slower, quieter struggle. The Sur and its tributaries are held like handles. German infantry take crossings with grit and method. American units counter with local knowledge and stubborn small unit leadership. It is not a place of sweeping arrows. It is a place of inches and frozen river spray. But those inches tie down battalions that cannot be spared for the push at the center. In a cold room far to the rear, a meeting writes a pivot into the story. A general who has been looking east turns his entire field army north, as if it were a single machine. Staffs sketch new lines of march, bridges to bear the weight, choke points to seize. Convoys begin to turn, columns in Lorraine unwinding and rewinding toward the Ardennes. The promise delivered to the map is blunt. Attack toward Bastogne. Break the ring when the sky allows. Squeeze the bulge until it snaps. The date penciled in is soon. The intention is sooner. Up near Stavelot and La Glaise, the sense of momentum shifts even under the same low clouds. The spearhead that had lunged now listens to its own stomach. Fuel trucks stop coming. The bridge at Trois Ponts is still gone. Other bridges, Cou, Cheneux, are threatened or blown. A try at Stoumont meets fire from men who arrived only hours earlier and act as though they have always lived on that street. Houses turn into forts. Courtyards become traps. The main road west looks less like a road and more like a sentence that trails off into silence. Maps are folded twice, then again to study the return routes. None are comfortable. The fourth night brings a colder wind and a touch of clarity, not in the sky yet, but in the mind. The grand design is no longer a sprint under cover of clouds. It is a race with obstacles that multiply. Traffic control fails in a forest lane, and a dozen vehicles wait engine to engine for a truck that will not start. A panther loses its tracks on ice and blocks a village gate. The bypass turns into a farmyard where a stone well becomes the pivot around which tons of steel must creep. A messenger is sent back to find fuel and does not return. The radio crackles with terse reports that sound more like weather than war. Bridge out, blockage at, new route required. West of the Schnee-Eifel, the last thin tendrils of the salient are cut or withdrawn. St. Vith's defenders, having stretched time until it creaked, receive the order to slip away before the bag closes. They go by night, by back roads, by ditches and hedgerows, the oval melting rather than shattering. The enemy enters and claims the ground, but the days taken cannot be returned. Clocks do not refund. Around Bastogne, the ring tightens into a belt. The soundscape changes. Artillery notes come from closer in. Tank engines rumble and fade like weather fronts, and the town's heartbeat steadies. Small patrols test the snow beyond the lines and report tall shapes in the tree line, dark against a darker forest. The heavy formations gathering in the distance are not rumors any longer. Yet inside the circle, the mood is not desperation. It is concentration. Fire plans are revised. Ammunition is moved like chess pieces. The road signs that still stand are painted over. A message makes a slow circuit. If cut off, hold. Relief is not a word, it's a direction. And then, somewhere before dawn, the wind veers. The clouds thin a shade. The eastern horizon shows a paler grey. People look up without meaning to. It is not enough yet, not enough for wings. But it's a hint, a promise written in air. On the ground, the facts remain hard. A spearhead stalled and hungry near L'Église. A centre that has paid gold for days at St. Vith and now steps back in order. A crossroads town becoming a fortress in all but name. The offensive is no longer a secret or a surprise. It is a struggle of reach versus hold, fuel versus distance, ice versus schedule. The forest listens. The roads decide, and the sky, for the first time in days, looks as if it might have something to say. Morning lifts like a pale veil, and the forest finally gives up the horizon. The change is small at first. Edges sharpen, shadows shorten. The sky turns from iron to pearl, but it is enough. Engines that once owned the roads now sound exposed. Down the valleys comes a new note, a distant rip that grows into presence. Allied aircraft slip under the thinning cloud, wings beating with cold, and the battlefield pivots. Columns that depended on secrecy are suddenly outlined in daylight. Bridges that seemed safe become crosshairs. Road knots that already bled time begin to hemorrhage it. The forest, which had muffled everything, now echoes with the staccato of relief. On the northern shoulder, the ridge remains a silent citadel. Elsenborn refuses to move, guns nested into snow, observers reading the white like a map. Each attempt to shoulder past is met by fire that feels prearranged, quick and precise. In the shadowed roads below, a hard-driving spearhead that once felt unstoppable meets the arithmetic of bridges and fuel. The span that Stavelot holds then trembles, then becomes a perilous thread. The three-way crossing at Trois Ponts is dropped into the river with a single blow. Detours turn into labyrinths through hamlets where every gate hides a waiting gun. La Glaise and Stoumont become names spoken with a wince. Tanks creep between stone walls polished slick by ice. Infantry hunch against doorways that suddenly spit flame. The push that once surged now lurches. Gauge needles sag. The radio asks the same question more often. Where is the fuel? Night accepts a decision that daylight made inevitable. Surrounded by narrowing roads and lengthening shadows, the spear point leaves its armor sleeping in the snow and slips away on foot. Ghosts in white smocks moving through spruce and hedgerow. In the morning, the abandoned hulks look like frozen animals. The threat to the Meuse from the north has burned itself out, not in a final charge, but in a slow, cold starvation of miles and minutes. In the center, Saint. Vith's stubborn oval finishes its purpose. The town falls, yes, but not the meaning of the time it bought. The defenders pull back when ordered, not in a rout, but like a fist, unclenching, leaving only smoke and a ledger of hours that cannot be reclaimed. The road west from there is no longer a highway. It is a messy trail crowded with wrecks, blown culverts, and those nervous pauses at every turn where drivers wonder if the next corner is open or already closed by a single ruined vehicle. Farther west, a different story is writing its crest. A German armored division noses past Rochefort and pushes as far as Celle, the map's ink pooling near the Meuse. For a heartbeat, the river looks touchable. Then teeth close from two sides. American armor comes in hard. British units hold the crossings farther north, and the spearhead is trapped in a pocket bounded by fields, hedges, and converging guns. The high water mark is reached not at the riverbank, but a handful of kilometers short of it, among winter corn stubble and low stone walls. The tide does not slam back. It turns, almost politely, and begins to ebb. Around Bastogne, the ring tightens to a belt and then a vice. Scouts report dark shapes in the trees all around. Demand arrives under a white flag and is answered in a single word that fits in a mittened fist. The reply is more than defiance. It is a diagnosis. The crossroads will not be handed over. They will be taken only at a cost that compounds by the hour. That same day, the sky, at last, opens wide enough for help to fall. Parachutes bloom like winter flowers above the town, bundles thumping into fields and streets, colors bright against the snow. Gliders whisper in, skimming hedgerows, breaking in the landing, but delivering what matters: bandages, ammunition, fuel, hope. The town breathes deeper. Attacks hammer in from every quarter. probing, massing, trying to pry a board loose in the ring. Villages on the outskirts become signatures written in smoke. Nefer's Corners, Marvy's Lanes, the slopes near Longvilly where teams trade distance for minutes that buy another layer of wire, another row of mines, another firing plan drawn in pencil and memorized in silence. Inside the town, roads are rationed like fuel. A convoy waits for another to pass. A single junction is treated as treasure. Orders circle steady and spare. Hold here, counterpunch there. If cut, reconnect. If separated, face inward. Far to the south, an army that had been looking in another direction finishes its turn, as if the whole machine were on a single axle. Columns grind north on sleet-slick roads, bridging creeks that weren't on the map and skirting villages that can swallow a battalion in a traffic knot. The advance is not elegant. It is relentless. Contacts spark along the way. Outposts pushed aside, ridges taken with a breath and a shout, crossroads seized and held by headlights and nerve. The objective is not the town itself, but the belt around it. Break the belt. Open a corridor. Keep it open, even if it's only as wide as a single road. Weather becomes ally instead of adversary. Fighter bombers rake the roads that feed the siege, turning tidy march tables into scattered pencil shavings. Tanks that could have made a difference arrive late or never. Bridges that might have mattered are replaced with fords that don't. The siege tightens anyway. Pressure has its own momentum. And then, on a raw December afternoon, an armored spear from the south noses into a village lit by the low sun and feels the ring flex. The corridor opens, narrow, dangerous, alive. The defenders inside do not cheer so much as exhale, then get back to work. A hole is not safety. It is a line that must be held from both sides. North of the relief line, the ridge still speaks in measured fire. To the east of it, the once dangerous spearhead is now a collection of immobile silhouettes dotting the white. In the center, German pressure leans but does not lift. The days of easy surprise are gone, replaced by a grind that favors the side with more fuel, more bridges, more sky. Along the Meuse, British and American positions are firm and patient, watching for ghosts that never quite appear. The creak in the great wheel of the offensive becomes audible, bearings heating, spokes loosening, the rim wobbling. Night runs through the last week of December like a black thread. On one of those nights, fireworks of a different kind mark the sky. Flares over roadblocks, signal lamps blinking along a tenuous corridor, tracer stitched across fields to remind the dark which direction is safe. In the morning, more parachutes. Trucks that could not move before now dare the roads under a canopy of friendly wings. The town's heartbeat steadies. Units in the ring begin to look outward again, not just inward. Patrols step beyond familiar fence lines and find the enemy closer, but also thinner. The turning of the year is felt before it is seen. Reports from the flanks are quieter. The list of lost bridges on the attacker's side grows longer. Fuel requests become apologies. The counter-stroke that had always been promised gathers weight. It is not a single arrow, but many, pushed along ridges and through groves, fitted to the land like a key to a lock. North of Bastogne, villages that once marked the limit of the ring are retaken and held. East of the town, roads that have been dangerous at noon become merely difficult at dusk. The bulge that looked like a fist on the map now resembles a hand opening, slowly, fingers stiff with cold. And yet the forest refuses any easy ending. Each bend in each road still demands respect. A farmhouse that offered shelter yesterday might be a trap today. A gentle slope hides a dug-in gun whose crew has decided to stay for reasons no map can record. The wind shifts, snow returns. Wings still come, but lower, careful, respecting the weather's fickle code. The work remains what it has been since the first shells fell. Take the next field, hold the next hedge, handle the next crossroads, as if it were the center of the earth. By the final days of December, the story has changed shape. Surprise has spent itself. Speed has run into winter's arithmetic. The towns that mattered still matter, but now in a different key. Bastogne not as an island, but as a springboard. Saint Vith not as a wound, but as scar tissue that limits motion. The moose not as a prize, but as a line that was never truly threatened once the sky returned. The roads begin to flow east again, first in trickles, then in streams. The forest, which held its breath for so long, lets it out in a faint mist you can see if you look closely at first light. The offensive does not end with a single shot or a single order. It fades in layers. A last probe here, a final withdrawal there, a column turning around quietly in a village square where the only witnesses are a few dark windows and a dog that does not bark. Ahead waits January, colder and clearer, with counterattacks already plotted on paper, warmed by hands. What began as a gamble under cloud is becoming a reckoning under open skies. The map is still dangerous, but the direction has reversed. The forest knows it, the roads know it, and the men on both sides feel it in their shoulders as they lift their packs and move one more time toward the next line of trees. January arrives with knife-edge clarity. The sky stays open and merciless. The forest shows its scars. What was momentum in the trees becomes arithmetic in the daylight. Fuel versus distance, steel versus bridges, will versus weather that no longer hides anything. Fighter bombers stitch the roads, sparking along hedgerows and stone walls, and every convoy that once trusted cloud cover now learns to measure movement in dashes, not marches. The great wheel that groaned in December begins to turn the other way. North of the Bulge, units that had dug into the Elsenborn heights lean forward, step by step, trading frozen foxholes for hedges, hedges for fields, fields for the next ridge. The villages that were nouns of resistance become verbs, retaken, cleared, held. A church spire reappears at the end of a street that was a rumour yesterday. The twin villages glow less often now. The line advances in small, relentless bites. Each crossroads tightens the noose, drawn across the map in pencil lines that, at last, have the sky behind them. In the centre, the wound around Saint. Vith hardens into scar. The oval that defied clean encirclement has done its work. Time, the rarest currency of winter, was spent there and cannot be reclaimed. Now the push flows east as water returns to its channel. Bridges are rebuilt in a hurry, timber across cold water, iron nails hammered with numb hands. And for every span raised, another demolished bridge is found ahead, blown to black teeth by a rear guard that knows the value of minutes. It is a chase in deep snow, and the snow favors the defender, but the sky favors the hunter. Around Bastogne, the ring that became a corridor becomes a fist of its own, striking outward. Patrols that once tiptoed now stride. The orchards south of town cough up wrecks and shell holes, and the road signs painted over in panic are repainted for traffic going east. The siege does not simply lift, it reverses, one field at a time. New coordinates are written in grease pencil on frozen fenders. Batteries shift and speak. Teams named for crossroads, Noville, Marvy, Warden, become arrows again. The word that moves through command posts is plain and steady. Expand. Elsewhere, an armoured thrust that had nosed as far as shells finds its fuel gone, its flanks probed, its map covered by other people's pencils. The trap closes without theatrics, guns from two directions, fields too open to hide in, hedges too low to shelter behind. Vehicles burn with a calm that feels almost ceremonial. The Meuse, so large on the map, remains untroubled water in the pale winter sun. Overhead, a different gamble is spent. On the year's first morning, the sky erupts with the last grand throw of an air force already threadbare. Airfields from the Low Countries to the Ardennes are struck at dawn. Hangars burn, aircraft die at their own thresholds. For a day, the surprise feels sharp. Then the bill arrives. Irreplaceable pilots, irreplaceable machines, losses paid out for time that cannot be turned into ground. The result is a paradox you can hear. The roar above grows louder with friendly engines and thinner with the enemies. From then on, the sky is a ceiling for one side and a mirror for the other. The counterstroke on the ground gathers its own symmetry. From the north and from the south, armoured columns grind toward each other through the cold folds of the Ordre and the smaller rivers that knot the terrain. Engineers throw planks across streams that weren't on the map. Scouts feel their way past orchards where every tree might hide a gun. The meeting is not theatrical. It happens the way winter things do, quietly, with fog around ankles and frost on canvas. Two columns see each other through drifting snow. A jeep with a white star rolls to a halt. A handshake happens on a road that yesterday belonged to no one. The map changes shape in that moment. The bulge is no longer a fist. It is a bruise healing. Farther east, the retreat is skillful and sour. Bridges fall behind the last vehicles. Demolitions crack in the night like knuckles. Signposts are twisted one last time as a parting joke. Villages emptied by bombardment receive a final, careful sweep for stragglers, then are left to their chimneys and crows. Units that had once moved with ambition now move with caution, feeling for ice under every wheel and listening for aircraft in every clearing. The campaign that began with a whispering mass in the forest becomes a long, cold exhale back toward the line of concrete and dragon's teeth that waits behind the frontier. The forest does not stop biting. Even as the bulge flattens, certain names remain sharp. A farmhouse that was shelter yesterday is a machine gun nest today. A curve that invited speed becomes a kill zone under a stand of firs. Mines lifted at noon are relayed at dusk. In the south, hills above the Sur mutter with skirmishes that serve a larger calculus. Tie down, bleed away, delay. To the north, the heights, always the heights, continue to trade shells for ground at a rate that rewards patience. Progress is measured in fences, crossed, and culverts cleared. The map advances by inches that feel like miles. The numbers pile up in ledgers smudged by cold hands. Casualties mount on both sides, tens of thousands cut from rosters that were already thin. Roughly 80 to 90,000 for the Allies, a comparable toll for the attackers whose best formations will not be the same again. Tanks that survived are counted. Tanks that did not are mapped for salvage when thaw comes. Ammunition stocks that were rationed in December are generous now, and that generosity shows in the soundscape. But even in victory, the arithmetic has teeth. Fuel is still a tyrant. Tracks still break on hidden rocks. Frost still turns rifle bolts into iron at the worst moments. By late January, towns that were compass points in December are behind the line again. Saint-Vith returns to a quiet it can barely recognize. Houffalize is a crossroads once more, not a hinge of strategy. The roads east begin to carry traffic that points the other direction, toward the frontier, toward the old forts and new plans beyond them. The great offensive that started as a surprise and bloomed into a crisis ends not with a shout, but with a series of brief, precise orders. Hold here, pivot there, prepare to breach the line when the weather and the supplies consent. The forest takes back some of its silence. The snow covers what it can. What remains is the shape of a lesson cut into winter itself. The gamble needed cloud, speed, and fuel. It received cloud, then lost it, found speed, then squandered it in bottlenecks a single wreck could create, counted on fuel, and discovered that distance is a creditor who never forgets. The defense needed time, roads, and stubbornness. It found all three, in a ridge that would not bend, in a town that would not fall, in 100 small stands where a crossroads or a stone bridge was held because someone decided that was the place to stand. The map will change again in spring, when Thor turns fields to glue and then to green. But the winter story is complete. Surprise arrived like a storm. Resolve answered like an anvil. The Bulge rose out of the forest and then sank back into it, leaving wrecks half buried, signposts broken, and tracks frozen into ruts that will last until the thaw. Those who walked it will remember the taste of breath behind a scarf, the way a bridge feels under boots when charges have just been cut, the particular quiet of snow after the last shell of a barrage falls. Roads decided, the sky testified, and the forest, in the end, told the truth back to anyone willing to listen. In winter, the strongest muscle is time, and it belongs to those who keep moving when the world goes still.